There's a moment, a quiet desperation that flashes across someone's face when they realize you don't need their approval, their validation, their nod of acceptance, and in that moment the average person panics. They smile harder, they explain more, they justify their choices, they perform. It sounds human, relatable, even kind. But to Machiavelli, it's the moment you surrender everything, because the second you seek approval, you admit someone else holds your worth. And in power games, the one who needs permission is always the slave. This is the brutal law Machiavelli understood before anyone else. The man who seeks approval places himself below. The man who withholds it forces others to climb toward him instead. Let's get one thing straight. Seeking approval rarely gets you respect. What it does is hand over your power to whoever you're trying to impress. Because when you chase validation, you're playing their game, you're accepting their authority, you're saying without realizing it, your opinion of me matters more than my own, and once they have that, they own you. Even if they give you praise, it's hollow, because only the desperate beg for recognition. The powerful, they let others come to them. They let people wonder if they've earned their attention, because they know the real move is this. Make them seek your approval instead. Make them perform for you. Make them question if they're good enough for your acknowledgement, because the one who needs validation first always loses control of the dynamic. And Machiavelli knew whoever controls who validates whom controls everything. Most people seek approval because they want to belong. They believe if they just prove themselves enough, perform enough, please enough, they'll finally be accepted. But that belief comes from a place of emotional weakness, not strategy. You don't want acceptance. You want dominance. Acceptance is for followers, dominance is for leaders, and power doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being necessary, respected, and immune to rejection. So when someone says, "I'm not sure about you," or "you need to prove yourself," and you immediately scramble to win them over, you've already lost because now you're performing. Now you're proving you need them. Now you've put yourself beneath them. And when you do that, you give up the most Machiavellian thing you have, self-sufficiency. Think of the most powerful people you've ever encountered. Not the most popular, not the most approved of. The ones who seemed completely indifferent to what others thought. The ones who made you want their respect without them asking for yours. The ones who, when they walked away from validation, never looked back. Machiavelli would tell you this. He who seeks approval submits. He who withholds it forces others to seek his favor, and they often overvalue him. That's the game. When you don't need validation, people get uncomfortable. They start trying harder to impress you. They look for signs you approve of them and find none. Suddenly their confidence shrinks while yours expands. Because you've done the one thing no insecure person can handle. You made them feel invisible, and that's how you flip the power. You let their need for your approval consume them while you remain untouchable. Let's go deeper. You walk into a room, someone important is there, someone everyone's trying to impress. The crowd performs, laughs too loud, agrees too quickly, maybe compliments their work, their status, their ideas. Everyone turns to see if they'll be acknowledged, and here's your move. Do nothing. No performance, no seeking, no trying. Just calm, total self-possession. In that moment, you're powerful because everyone in the room is now forced to ask, why isn't he trying? Does he not care? Is he too important to need this? Did his indifference just make him more interesting? You just flipped the entire social frame. Because people aren't watching who's trying hardest, they're watching who doesn't need to try. And indifference, when delivered with presence, commands more respect than any performance ever could. Machiavelli knew this. He didn't just study politics, he studied psychology, and he understood one thing better than anyone. Power isn't how hard you try, it's how little you need to. Now here's the coldest move of all. Sometimes you don't just withhold approval, you make people work for it. Someone wants your validation, your acknowledgement, your praise. They fish for it. They hint at their accomplishments. They wait for your response. And instead of giving it, you stay neutral. Look past them and say, that's nice. Or, good for you. Not harsh, not dismissive, just cool, measured distance. What happens? They scramble because they were hoping for enthusiasm. They were hoping to feel validated. Instead, they're left wondering if they're good enough. That's when the hunger sets in on their side. They start trying harder, doing more, seeking your eyes again. They start wondering if they disappointed you, if they need to prove themselves more, if they're not as impressive as they thought. And guess what? Now they're performing for you. You just took the power they gave away and made them dance for it without lifting a finger. There's a moment when validation becomes unbearable. Not for you, but for the one who expected it. That's when the tables turn. They thought they were the impressive one. Now they're exposed as the one begging for recognition. And you just became something far more powerful than liked. You became a standard. Machiavelli understood something that most people will never grasp. Approval is not currency, it's debt. And when someone seeks your validation desperately, they want you to owe them praise. They want to trap you in emotional reciprocity, because the more you validate them, the more power they think they have. So instead, let them starve. And what happens? They overcompensate. They repeat their achievements. They start looking needy, insecure, desperate. You said nothing, but now they're the one under judgment because the crowd isn't watching what's being said. They're watching who needs whom more. That's social power. And it doesn't come from being popular. It comes from being selective. Let's say you're in a work environment. Someone subtly seeks your approval, says, "I think that project went really well, don't you think?" Or, "I worked really hard on this." They're looking for validation. They want you to affirm them. What do most people do? They lean in, they compliment, they validate, they give away power. The room registers kindness, but also submission. But the Machiavellian operator, he stays measured. He nods slowly. And if he speaks, it's not praise, it's evaluation. It was solid, or there's room to grow. Now the seeker has to process. Suddenly they are being measured. They're uncertain because measured response from the selective is judgment with teeth. It makes people feel they haven't quite arrived without you doing anything harsh. In romantic or personal relationships, this is even more devastating. Say someone you're dating says, "Do you think I'm attractive?" Or, "Do you like me?" The average person will rush in. They'll flood with reassurance, compliments, validation, and in doing so, they lower themselves. But the Machiavellian approach is different. You don't dismiss them. You don't flood them. You let the question sit. You watch them feel the weight of their own need. Then with calm you respond, "I'm here, aren't I?" Short, grounded, no overflow, no desperate validation. Now they feel something shift. They realize you don't give approval freely. They wonder if they need to earn it because in that moment you held power over what matters most, the emotional economy. And whoever controls scarcity controls desire. There's a deeper tactic, and it's even colder. Don't just withhold approval when asked. Make your standards unknown. Someone does something impressive, don't acknowledge it. Don't congratulate. Don't praise, but don't criticize either. Let your neutrality sit like a test. Let them sit in the silence of not knowing if they measured up. This breaks people in two ways. They realize their achievement didn't move you. They start spinning internal narratives, and most of the time it consumes their focus. Why? Because the average person survives on external validation. When you take that away, they obsess, they spiral, they try harder, they seek your eyes more, and with every new attempt they look more invested, more needy, more beneath you, all while you remain perfectly still. And that's when you win. Not because you praised anything, but because they enslave themselves trying to earn something from you. Here's where it gets elite. Instead of giving approval when someone seeks it, make their need for it look like insecurity. Someone fishes for compliments about their success. It's interesting how much validation some people need. Someone brags about their achievements waiting for your praise. Confidence doesn't announce itself. Someone asks if you're impressed by them. I don't measure people by what they tell me. You don't just withhold approval, you make seeking it their weakness. And now they're the ones looking insecure. It's not just a withholding, it's a power inversion. You use their own need and turned it into their public exposure. Machiavelli would call this the mirror of ambition. Do not feed the hungry ego. Let the beggar see his own desperation reflected back. The world teaches you to validate others, to encourage them, to build them up. But Machiavelli saw the trap. He knew that the moment you freely give approval, you admit they needed it from you. So the true strategist never plays that game. Instead, he appears too elevated to be impressed easily, too selective to praise carelessly, too secure in his own value to need to affirm others. And slowly, those who seek his approval start looking desperate, performative, hollow, weak. Because the more you give approval freely, the less it's worth. But the more you withhold it, the more valuable they assume you are. And that assumption is where power is born. Most people think power is about being validated, being recognized, being praised, being approved of, being acknowledged as worthy. But Machiavelli would laugh at this because the second you try to earn validation, you've already declared someone else's judgment superior to your own. And when you hand someone that authority, you hand them your leash. Let's say you're in a group, a social setting, a networking event, a party. Someone makes you feel like you need to prove your worth. So what do you do with that tone? That's interesting, with clear disinterest. I guess that works for some people. What do most people do? They over-explain. They try to sound more impressive. Or worse, they seek validation from others in the group, trying to recover status, and they think they're managing perception. But what they're really doing is confirming that a hierarchy was just established. Now everyone's watching the performance, and that alone makes you look beneath them. Here's what the Machiavellian does instead. Pause. Hold the moment without filling it. Scan the person, not with insecurity, but with quiet assessment. Then, and only if needed, offer something calm, detached, and final. I don't need you to understand it, or that's fine, or nothing at all. Just a long, measured look. What happens next is predictable. The challenger shifts. They try to recover. They look for others to validate their dismissal. They try to laugh it off. They feel the weight of the room shifting toward you because your lack of need just told the room something louder than words ever could. You're not the one seeking approval. They are now seeking yours. In the digital arena, things escalate even faster. Posts, comments, likes, follows, people performing for metrics. Here's the truth Machiavelli would burn into your mind. In the court of public opinion, seeking approval looks weak unless your indifference commands mystery. So, here's the tactic. When people fish for your validation online, don't give it. Don't like. Don't comment. Don't acknowledge. Or better, you engage only when it serves you. Example. Someone posts constantly, seeking reactions. Instead of validating every post, you ignore 90%. Then once, unpredictably, you engage briefly. What just happened? You didn't validate freely. You created scarcity. Now your approval is worth something. You look selective. They look grateful. And the audience, they begin to wonder why your acknowledgement matters so much. That's not participation. That's status signaling. Let's get even more surgical. There are 3 tools you can use instead of seeking approval. Indifference, the default, cold, powerful, makes others seek yours. Selective acknowledgement, engage only when it raises your value, never when it confirms theirs. Standards enforcement, short, sharp observations that remind people they haven't earned your validation yet. Examples, someone seeks praise for basic effort. It's a start. They fish for compliments about their appearance. You look fine. They wait for you to be impressed by their achievements. Good for you. These aren't encouragements. They're boundaries. They don't say, you're amazing. They say, you haven't moved me. And that's the core. The Machiavellian never freely gives what others desperately need. He creates hunger and walks away while they starve. When you refuse to seek approval, something strange happens to those around you. They become obsessed because they expected you to need them. and instead you're self-contained. They start trying harder, they fish more, they perform louder, they expose more of their insecurity, and the more they do, the more you rise in the eyes of others. Why? Because you've made them reveal their need for you, and that's the Machiavellian endgame. You don't chase validation, you let their chase for yours expose them. You think needing approval is natural, but being self-sufficient is far more dangerous. The needy person has weakness. The self-sufficient person has power. People who are always seeking validation are seen as beneath. People who remain calmly self-assured, they are elevated. Machiavelli knew this. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But even more, it's better to be unreachable than agreeable. Because the unreachable person is intriguing. He doesn't perform, he doesn't bow, and that means you control the standard. Let's crush the final illusion. You don't need everyone's approval to win. You need no one's. The man who needs approval is bound by consensus, soft, malleable. The man who needs no approval, he's not always liked. He's not always included, but no one dares dismiss him casually. That's what happens when you never seek validation. Your presence becomes not about what people think of you, but what you think of them. That's how you flip the power. You stop performing for acceptance, and instead, you create a gravity that makes people perform for yours. Because even your silence feels like evaluation, and every approval you don't give becomes scarcity in their mind. The final evolution is not indifference, it's self-authority. A presence so rooted, so internally validated, so far above the need for external praise, that approval simply becomes irrelevant. And this doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from self-possession by design. Because once you've trained yourself not to seek, not to perform, not to need acknowledgement, you cross a line where your existence becomes the approval, and that's when power becomes effortless. Think about the few people in life who never seek validation. They don't post for likes, they don't fish for compliments, they don't perform for crowds, and yet people admire them more. Why? Because self-sufficiency in the face of judgment creates magnetism. It invites curiosity. And the human mind, when shown someone who doesn't need them, fills the void with respect. People assume you must be valuable. You must have something they don't. You must be so secure in who you are that you don't even blink when ignored. And that assumption, that's what makes people follow you. Machiavelli didn't care about being popular. He cared about being powerful. And the one who never seeks approval is always powerful over perception, even when surrounded by those desperate for it. Here's the paradox. The more you seek validation, the more alone you become. Because no one respects someone who constantly needs affirmation. But if you remain self-contained, if you stand indifferent, unbothered, people start to want your respect. They say, he doesn't seem impressed by anything. What would it take to earn his acknowledgement? Why doesn't he need us? Suddenly, they become seekers. And what's better than seeking approval? Making others seek yours without asking? That's Machiavellian leverage. Let the crowd chase your validation while you remain unmoved. It doesn't happen overnight. You build it like a monument stone by stone, by acting with self-possession, by choosing containment over performance, by never validating more than you must. Start here. Never praise excessively to gain favour. Let people wonder if they've impressed you. Your restraint tells the room that approval from you is earned, not given. Respond to fishing for validation with calm neutrality, not enthusiasm. That's nice, said with total composure. It diffuses their expectation. Use short closing phrases instead of validation. Okay, good to know. If you say so. Each one closes the door. It doesn't feed their need, it ends the transaction. Study how you hold your face, your body, your energy. The Machiavellian never performs, panders, or pleases for approval. Self-containment is his power, and the more self-contained you are when others perform desperately, the more your value rises silently. When people don't know how to impress you, they revere you because you become a standard, not needy, but untouchable. A mirror that reflects their own hunger for approval back at them, Machiavelli would say. The most dangerous man is not the one who seeks approval first, it is the one who never needs it. You will reach a point where people stop treating you casually, not because you performed for them, but because they know their validation means nothing to you. Your presence says, "I don't need your approval, I let you seek mine while wondering if you'll ever get it." There is a difference between confidence and self-sufficiency. Confidence still cares, still reacts, still adjusts based on feedback. Self-sufficiency, it doesn't even register the judgment. That's the Machiavellian ideal. You don't win the approval, you make approval irrelevant by never needing to seek it. Because when you no longer need validation, people stop seeing you as someone they can dismiss. You're not on their level. You've moved beyond the game of acceptance. And the only approval that matters, your own. From this point on, you don't live in performance. You live in authority. You define your worth. You define your standards. You define your validation. And people feel that. They feel the certainty in your silence, the self-possession in your stillness, the power in your indifference. You're not seeking anymore, you're selecting. And that's when the room shifts. The crowd performs harder. Your critics grow quieter. Your name carries weight, not because you chased it, but because you never needed it. Never seeking approval doesn't mean never engaging. It means engaging only when it elevates you. When you acknowledge someone, it should feel like a gift, not a given. Because every time you don't need validation, every time you hold still while the world performs, you become the one thing they can't manipulate. A man who answers to no one but himself.